meant to be a mobile tool to cut.
Oh, right, your bandsaw. Yeah. I've got one of those too. Yeah.
This little wall mount jig so that it essentially is now a permanent metal cutting bandsaw.
It's a bandsaw, yeah. But you could take it off and use it by hand whenever you want.
If I ever wanted to, yeah.
Brilliant. I love that mount.
Super simple. If you go online, there's a bajillion different ways of people doing that.
Oh, I need to make one of those because I've got one of these.
It's the best.
And did you make that plate yourself?
Mm-hmm. Well, I just bought a 10 by 10 hot rolled steel plate off Amazon. 2 of them actually for like $10. There's another one right there. And then I just literally used the saw while it was on. I bought a switch that plugs into it, and then I just cut through, and then I kind of just wiggled the blade until I got a little.
How are you? I have kefir.
That'd be great.
Or milk.
I'd love kefir.
You like some kefir?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I put the template down, I cut it out on there, and then once that's done, I do my heat treat process, which is thermal.
It's okay, I'm videoing.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thermal cycling, which is essentially
annealing it.
Or normalizing. Annealing, I do 2 cycles of normalizing, 1 cycle of annealing.
Okay.
And that takes out all the stress that's internally been built up in the steel from either getting banged around or sheared.
Recrystallizes it.
Correct. And essentially gets it to like the internals like XY, 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 so it's as strong as it possibly could be. And then I quench.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Which takes the steel from a soft state to an extremely rigid state. It's essentially like glass.
Crystallizing it.
Yep. And then you temper it, which when I first got into knife making,
you want to do it?
Huh?
You want to do one? Is it?
It takes a long time.
Okay.
It takes 2 cycles of hour-long.
Okay.
Cooks essentially, and that will make the steel still extremely hard and strong, but it makes it more flexible and less likely if I was to take
shatter.
Correct. Like if I was to take this before tempering it, I could just go and it would just break.
Right.
But when you temper it, it softens the steel slightly.
But it's still crystalline, so it's still will hold an edge.
It's perlite, and you would probably get along with my good friend Peter Burt very well. He's a absolute brain when it comes to the science that goes into not just this is 80 CRV2, but he could dissect essentially
80 CRV2 is this
steel.
stock.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a steel that's commonly used throughout a lot of knives, a variety of different kinds of knives.
Okay.
But it's a very good steel because it's easy to heat treat.
Okay.
It makes the process relatively user friendly, and for me, only being like less than a year, or I guess I am about a year in now. It just makes that part very less stressful.
Right.
And then once this is an unground, it's just cut.
That's a blank.
It's basically a blank essentially.
But it's been treated.
Yes, correct. And then I get it on my grinder, my 2x72 grinder over there, that large machine.
The sanding thing?
Mm-hmm. And I take it down to essentially what it will be, shape-wise and blade geometry-wise. As you can see, it's very thin and tapered now.
Right, as opposed to this, which is thick.
Mm-hmm.
So you've gotten it to the sort of form that you want.
Correct. And then this is only with 60 grit sandpaper.
Do you use water when you do that, or do you do it dry?
I dip it.
Dip it.
Whenever it gets hot, especially after you've heat treated, the last thing you want it to do is get too hot because it'll fuck up your temper.
Ruin the annealing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I go from...
So why don't you do that first and then do the tempering?
Some people do, some people don't. I actually, up until recently, did grind this one, thanks to my friend Peter Burt, is the first one I've done where I do the heat treatment process before getting it to this point. Normally I get it to this point, then I do the heat treating process.
Okay.
For two reasons I did it that way. Reason number one was because it's softer steel, so it's easier to grind.
Yeah.
And two, it was just what I learned from online.
So what's the advantage of doing it first?
Preventing warps.
Oh.
So when you have steel that is different thicknesses, and it's like this part is going to get hotter.
Right, and it'll start to wiggle and deform.
And exactly. So unless you keep it an extremely even keel throughout the entire heat treat process, you're going to end up getting movement.
Wavy stuff.
And that's the last thing you want. And then you have to work harder. I mean, I have at this point gotten pretty good with my heat treat process where I've never had a problem with it, or I don't have problems with it as often. But then when I was at my friend Peter Burt's house, he was like, why don't you just heat treat and then do your grinding? Because the steel's the same thickness throughout. And if you did get a little bit of a warp, even with this, you have enough steel that you can grind it out.
Right.
So
cool.
That made sense to me.
All right.
And and then once I get it from this point, I grind it on that same machine with 120, 220, and then 400 sandpaper, and get it to a nice semi-polished
This
state.
is just a belt sander.
Yeah, that's my baby. I'm absolutely in love with this thing. It's just a 2 horsepower motor that you would essentially find on like a treadmill or something along those lines.
Right.
It has a variable speed remote, so power on.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
which is really cool for being able to use this for multiple, purposes. When I'm really hogging off steel, I have it up to like 70 or 80%, and then when I'm getting down to the like nitty gritty stuff, I slow it down, and then you don't like overheat the steel and fuck it up, and I use it for handles when I do like the handle polishing and stuff. But yeah, so then once I get it to, this is 220 on here.
Okay.
And then I got my hand sanding block, and then I hand sand all the steel up to 800 grit, and it looks really pretty and nice.
Okay.
This one's all already hand sanded, but
And so
you can't see it
you've covered it in tape to protect the finish.
Yeah, just to make sure that I don't scratch it in the process of.
So this is one where are you finished with the knife, or are you?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have. I can show you a finished one in the house.
Okay.
I just glued this one up. Everybody does handles differently. I like to do handles with a separation between 2 different kinds of koa, or sometimes like mango and koa, or sometimes those 2 are going to be redwood and koa.
Wow.
But
Soft and hardwood.
the redwood's tricky to work with.
Yeah.
Because it's like
really soft,
super fragile. And I learned that the hard way the first time I did it. But I use 5-minute JB Weld epoxy, which is easy to work with, but also if you're not paying attention to your time, you can totally get in a pickle that would be shitty. And one thing I learned today, I still don't know exactly what caused it, but with this exact knife, I glued it up, and normally it's pretty rigid within like 15 minutes. Like if they say it's cured after an hour.
Temperature though makes it.
But with this knife, after 3 hours, it was still gooey. Like it's still like tacky to the finger. And I was like, okay, there's something wrong. And it was the bottom of the bottle. So I don't know if that glue might have gone stale or something like that. Right. And I just made this executive decision in the last minute, and I just like pulled the handle off.
And redid it.
And now within 20 minutes, it's already like 10 times harder. So I'm so glad that I did that, because that could have been a bigger problem later down the road. But I could
show me how your furnace works.
Okay. I actually need to get a new tube because as you can see, this one got a little cut.
Yeah. I've been working on my fire pit on my lanai myself.
Oh yeah.
Doing that kind of stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I want to get a stainless steel tube.
Yeah, braided.
Yeah, because I'm actually in the process of making a new forge out of this 5-gallon propane tank here.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I took the thing off and let all the gas
Right.
leak out, and I'm gonna cut.
So you're gonna make that a forge.
Mhm.
So you're gonna line it with bricks.
First with super wool, then use rigidizer, which will make the wool essentially get more firm, and then you put refractory cement to line it.
Okay.
And then I'll put a couple.
Is that what this?
No, those are just fire bricks, like those ones that are right there. That is like the most basic forge you can essentially build. I learned how to do that on YouTube and then just recreated it myself. I went down to that military store in Hilo and bought this.
Fire it up for me.
Okay. And then where's my lighter? I had it a second ago and then I put it down and then I lost it. This is the story of my life. I will have something that is. Alright. And normally, for the longest time, I had this like this. But as you can imagine, when you're working with anything, gravity's going to work against you.
Right.
And it's going to, when it gets really hot.
Right.
And I made a really long chef knife for the executive chef down at Napua. And it was a 16-inch blade. And the first time I tried to heat treat it, this was the first time I'd ever done a knife of that size. It kept
slagging.
Yeah. And I was getting really frustrated. And
So now you just do it straight up and down.
Well, what I started to make that one work, I got these aluminum angle iron things, and I made a jig. So I was like, put them down like this, and then I put two of them. Well, I had this one down first. But anyways, I rush out of the forge after quenching, and then just
Flatten
slam
it
it
out.
in there, and hopefully, because if you don't get it in quick enough, then you're essentially it's pointless, because once it gets below, I think 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, it's already in the form that it's going to be in.
Right.
So anyways, yes, I figured out why not let gravity be my friend instead of my
Right.
enemy.
Just do it vertically.
Yeah. And I take my template until it gets to temperature. There's all these folklore people say that magnets are the key to knowing it's at critical temp, which means that that's when it's ready to be dumped into my oil tank.
That's oil, and that's oil?
It's just peanut oil.
Peanut oil. Cool.
And I mean, a lot of people use like fast 50-50 oils and like buy that expensive shit, but like people use canola oil, and peanut oil works great. Anyways, and the magnet, when it becomes, the steel becomes non-magnetized, you know you're at a minimum of 1200 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And when you get it to 1550, which is considered critical temp, so what I do is I have this magnet.
Oh yeah.
I touch throughout the whole thing, and once I know it's not magnetized, I know I'm at a good starting point, and then I get it to a little bit hotter, and then based on color, when it's like a kind of a bright red going into orange,
Right.
I quench. And once you've quenched, you let it cool all the way back down to room temperature, essentially, and then you file test. And when you file test, the file should skate on the steel to the point where you could put in like all your strength.
And it won't.
It will not dig in. And
Then
that's how you know
that's when it's
you have hardened steel.
cool.
Yeah. So like these.
So like
ones-
this one is done,
Yeah.
and that is hardened.
100%. Yeah.
So if I ran a file across it, it would just skip over it.
Yeah. You can do it on this one. Like that's just taking off like the Ford scale, but you can see it's not.
Nothing's happening.
Nothing. It's as strong as it can be. You
Okay.
know? So that's how you want it to be, because that translates into edge retention, and edge retention, as you can imagine, is very important with a good knife, because you don't want your knife to go dull after very minimal use.
Well, I don't really understand that. I mean, I understand that the edge is kind of like a serrated, like it's the cutting edge of the knife is actually, you know, when you sharpen it, you're sharpening it from both sides, and you're sort of folding it over, so you end up with a sort of micro serrated
The burr,
a burr.
you take
right?
that off. You take that off by stropping.
Oh, okay.
And a strop is essentially like,
Leather.
yes, and I have a leather strop that I put on that thing, but since I've gone through so many different strategies and processes of what I think works best for sharpening, and my knives are incredibly sharp, like to the point where it's pretty fucking scary. You know? My left leg is like shaved almost bald now, because I can just shave my leg with my, you know, knives, which is razor sharp.
Yeah.
But I went from the most complex sharpening process to the simplest, and the simplest works way better.
And what's the simplest way?
Just 120 grit, 400 grit strop, instead of going from 120, 220.
You do it face cutting edge into the movement.
Like this.
Can you just show me a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I can't really legit sharpen one right now, but I mean, I would essentially just put on a 120 at 30 power, and then I put it at
Oh, so you go down.
Yeah, I like it like this. A lot of people do it like this.
Yeah.
But but people who do it like this, I never installed it because I never felt like there would be a use. But you can put a knob and make it go reverse as well. And when they do it like this, they make it go in reverse, so the belt's going this way, away from you. And then they go like this. But I don't like that because it sends metal up towards you.
Right.
And I don't want to get metal in my eye or my face.
Right.
So I go like this, and I just, run it slowly across all the way, and then I stop with the point of the knife in the middle of the belt and pull out. And I work one side until I have a burr, and then once I have a burr on that side, I flip and I do the same process until the burr goes to the other side. And then you just refine, and like the burr starts off relatively big. It looks like kind of like snowflakes almost, And then when you go from 120 to 400, it gets extremely fine. And then I literally sometimes just go like this on my pant leg.
Rip it off.
And then I take this is my 400 grit belt, and I turn it inside out. Like, so this is
the backing of it.
Yep, and that's like a soft, like
almost, leather.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's my leather strap right there, but I don't like it because it's has a lot of slop in it.
Yeah.
This runs
So you
really
use the
smooth.
backing of a sanding belt.
Yep, and then I put my purple compound on there, and instead of doing this is called the platen, this hard part.
Yeah.
I put it on the soft spot right here. I do it there, and then once
So it's got give. What is this thing? Did you make it or?
No, I ordered it. I thought about making it, because it's very simple.
Yeah.
It's legitimately just like, iron.
Yeah. It's just
tubing.
like a car hitch with a
Right. The only thing that was confusing was how to do this. There's like a
spring, yeah.
spring-loaded thing,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah.
different ones that have like a, like on a hatchback, those like compressed type things that like go and like keep the hatchback window up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't remember what they're called.
Pneumatic sort of thing.
Right. So they have those, and you can like pull down and then put cause like this is how you put the belt on.
Right.
Like you put it on the
Right,
flat, and you
right.
wrap it around the back, and then you go like that, and then fire it up.
Because you're changing belts often.
Oh, very often.
Right.
And so it's like, it's very useful to have time is money,
Right.
And so for me to have the
Just
ability
be able to push down, change a
Correct.
belt, and go.
without any hesitation is really important,
Right.
And then I have this cool little attachment here, which is like also really fun. I got this not too long ago, but it's called a small wheel attachment. Take this off, take this off, put this on here, and then I have all these little bearings that have different diameters on them.
Wow.
So I can-
Cool.
Yeah, so then I can put that on, tighten it up, and then now I can kind of like stand in like tighter spots and stuff.
Wow.
And
Nice.
I also use it for detail work, like I do these little like snake designs on the spine.
Do that by hitting it on the edge there.
Yes, so like, and just
Cool.
go back and forth.
So you don't even have a stone grinder. You use belts.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
All belts.
No stones. Belts.
Stones, not one. Most
Interesting.
people don't use that anymore.
Really?
Yeah. Most people just rely simply on
Belts.
the belt grinder. That thing is as versatile. There's so many more attachments and like upgrades and things you could buy.
Right.
And that is like the lowest grade grinder you can buy. Like that one costed me $2,200 shipped. You can get ones that are like $8,000.
Right.
Crazy.
But that one looks pretty solid.
Oh, I love it. I'm for my first this is what I started with. I made all my like probably first 10, 15 knives on that.
On that, yeah.
And then I was like, this is ridiculous because that has one speed. It runs way too fast, and it would burn steel, and it was just not practical. And so I was like, all right, if I'm gonna take this seriously and really try to turn it into a business, I need the right tools, And this is.
So this is the one that you're asking about.
So look.
All right.
So it just.
I'm gonna stop this recording.